The morning had been quiet. The kind of soft, golden morning that tricks you into believing nothing in the world can go wrong. I was stirring a pot of oatmeal for breakfast, the kitchen filled with the faint smell of cinnamon and warm milk. Then my phone vibrated across the counter. Too loud, too sharp, too wrong. 6:43 a.m., unknown number. My stomach tightened. No one with good news calls that early. Not on a weekday, not from an unknown number, not when the world is still waking up. I wiped my hands on a kitchen towel and hesitated before answering. Hello? My voice carried that cautious edge mothers get when they sense bad news before it arrives. There was a shaky breath on the other end. Not just nervous, but trembling, like someone bracing themselves to tell me something awful. Mrs. Bennett? A familiar voice, older, softer. This is Pastor Coleman from St. Luke's Church. And just like that, the universe shifted. My fingers tightened around the phone. I gripped it so hard the edges dug into my palm. Pastor? I managed. Is everything okay? He hesitated. That hesitation sliced through me like a blade. I don't know how to say this, he whispered. But your children, Emily and Jordan, they're at my office. I stopped breathing. My children? My mind raced. Both names together. Why? How? They lived in different states. They barely saw each other. Are they hurt? I asked, voice cracking. No, he said quickly. Not hurt, but they came to get married. For a full second, the world went soundless. Then everything crashed at once. The ticking clock, the boiling oatmeal, the hum of the refrigerator, the pounding inside my chest. Married? I whispered, the word barely escaping my lips. My vision blurred. The kitchen swayed. The wooden floor tilted a little. Or maybe it was just my legs giving out. I grabbed the back of a chair, but eventually I sank into it, unable to stand. But they're step-siblings? I said, my voice thin, breaking, confused. They didn't know, the pastor said softly. They seem devastated. My heart shattered into 100 pieces. Emily, Jordan, at a church, trying to get married, and they didn't know. They didn't know what they were to each other. They didn't know the truth of our tangled, broken family. I pressed my free hand against my forehead, trying to steady the spinning world. Are they still there? I asked, breath trembling. Yes, he said. I told them we needed parental confirmation because of the unusual situation. I swallowed hard. I'm coming, I whispered, and I grabbed my keys, my purse, and a heavy, overwhelming fear I couldn't shake. To understand how we ended up here, at this absurd, heartbreaking moment, I have to go backwards. My name is Monica Bennett, and I'm 48 years old. I live in a small house just outside Atlanta, the kind with a porch swing that creaks and a mailbox older than some marriages. My life is simple, or at least it used to pretend to be. I had Emily when I was 25. She was my entire world. Bright, stubborn, with big brown eyes and a smile that softened even the angriest days. For 7 years, it was just us. And honestly, I liked it that way. Then came Daniel, a gentle man with tired eyes and a widower's grief. He had a son, Jordan, only 5 when we met. A shy boy with soft features and a quiet sadness in his expression. We did everything right. Blending families is supposed to be a slow, delicate process. We followed every parenting book, every therapist's recommendation. Family game nights, trips to the zoo, matching pajamas at Christmas, trying to build something whole out of two broken halves. But life doesn't always cooperate. Daniel and I separated 3 years after we married. No dramatic fights, no infidelity, just distance, exhaustion. Two adults drowning in responsibilities and forgetting how to hold each other up. We agreed on 3 things. Each parent keeps custody of their biological child. Holidays are shared. We stay cordial, not enemies, for the kids' sake. Emily grew up with me in Atlanta. Jordan moved with Daniel to Tennessee. They saw each other maybe once or twice a year, enough to be familiar, but not close. Not siblings in any emotional sense. Just 2 kids whose parents had once shared a last name, still, legally, on paper, in the eyes of the world, step-siblings. And that word alone carried weight, a heavy, awful, suffocating weight. Emily left for Chapel Hill at 19. She wanted to study psychology, help people, understand them. She had a heart shaped for healing. For years, she called me twice a week. Mom, classes are good. Mom, I miss you. Mom, guess what happened today? Then 3 months ago, the calls changed. Shorter, colder, vaguer. Mom, I'm busy. Mom, don't worry. Mom, I'm fine. A mother knows. I asked if there was someone special in her life. She always deflected. I'll tell you soon, she said once, her voice soft, almost guilty. I thought she was just growing up, becoming independent. I never imagined she was hiding a love story so complicated it could break our entire family in half. I don't remember locking the front door. I don't remember grabbing my coat. I barely remember getting into the car. What I do remember, vividly, is the drive. The sky was still gray with morning haze, the roads mostly empty, but my mind was a storm. Fear, disbelief, guilt, it all swirled violently inside me. Every red light felt like torture. Every minute an eternity. My thoughts raced with cruel speed. How could this happen? How did they meet? Why didn't she tell me she was dating someone? Why didn't I ask more questions? What do I tell Daniel? How do I look them in the eyes after this? My hands tightened around the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I kept picturing Emily, my little girl, in a wedding dress she never showed me, with tears on her cheeks, confused and heartbroken. And Jordan, a boy I helped raise. A boy who once held my hand at the zoo because he was scared of the tiger exhibit. A boy who used to ask if I'd read him one more bedtime story. How did we get here? I pressed harder on the accelerator. By the time I reached the small brick church at the edge of town, my heart felt like it had aged 10 years. Pastor Coleman stood outside, coat wrapped tight, breath misting in the cold air. His posture was heavy, like he'd been carrying my family's crisis for hours. Thank you for coming, he said softly, hands folded in front of him. Are they still here? My voice shook. Yes, inside my office. A cold wind blew across my face, but it couldn't compare to the chill inside my chest. Are they, I swallowed, married yet? He shook his head. No. They paused when I explained that. He exhaled. Paperwork. My lungs loosened just enough to take a breath. Without another word, I walked toward the church door, each step heavier than the last. The pastor's office was at the end of a narrow hallway. Old wooden floors, stained glass windows, and quiet so heavy it pressed against my ears. My heart hammered in my chest as I reached the door. I hesitated. 1 second, too. I wasn't ready, but I wasn't sure I ever would be. I turned the handle. Emily was the first thing I saw. My daughter sat curled in a wooden chair, her knees pulled up slightly, her eyes red and swollen. The moment she saw me, her face crumpled, relief and shame and heartbreak all at once. "Mom?" she whispered. Across from her sat Jordan. He was older now, taller, broader, with the beginnings of a beard and those kind brown eyes I remembered from years ago. But today, those eyes were filled with fear. He stood up instantly. "Mrs. Bennet, Monica, please." His voice cracked. "Please let us explain." Emily shot out of her seat and ran into my arms. She held me like she was drowning. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she cried into my shoulder. "I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." "I know, baby," I whispered, stroking her hair. My heart felt like it was being ripped in two, half aching for her, half terrified for what came next. Jordan swallowed, his hands shaking slightly. "We met in Chapel Hill, at a community project. We didn't know each other. Not really, not since we were kids. And we just connected," Emily said, wiping her eyes. "He made me laugh. I felt safe with him. It didn't cross my mind that he could be—" She choked on the word. I understood. I didn't want to say it either. Jordan stepped closer, voice trembling but honest. "Mrs. Bennet, the last time we saw each other, we were little kids who barely remembered anything. We didn't grow up together. We didn't talk. We didn't share a house, a school, nothing. We weren't siblings." The logic made sense, but logic doesn't stop a mother's heart from breaking. I looked from one to the other, two grown adults, two young hearts in love, two people who had stumbled into a nightmare neither of them created. Emily looked at me, eyes wet. "We stopped the ceremony when the pastor told us. We couldn't go through with it. Not like this." Jordan took a deep breath, the kind someone takes before dropping a bomb. "There's something else," he said quietly. "We already had the courthouse ceremony last night." My knees nearly buckled. "What? You're already married?" Emily nodded slowly, tears spilling again. "We just wanted something small, simple. We didn't think there was anything wrong. We just didn't know." The world spun. They weren't just in love. They weren't just confused. They were already husband and wife. Pastor Coleman cleared his throat gently. "There's more," he said. "Something I believe you need to see." Jordan reached into a folder sitting on the table and slid it toward me with trembling hands. "Monica," he whispered, "please read this." Inside were stacks of documents, legal papers, old adoption forms, hospital certificates, and a letter so worn the ink had faded. My blood ran cold. "What is this?" I asked, lifting the papers with shaking fingers. Jordan took a deep, painful breath. "I hired a private investigator last year to find my biological mother." I stared at him, stunned. "You did what?" He nodded. "I wanted answers. I always felt like something was missing. Around Christmas, the PI found the truth, and it wasn't what I expected." He pointed to a line on one of the documents. At first, I didn't understand. Then I read it again, and each word cut deeper. Biological child of Lucille Ann Harper, Daniel's late wife. But next to that line, in red ink, record corrected, DNA mismatch, child not related to mother. My breath caught. What does that mean?" I whispered. Jordan's voice dropped to almost nothing. It means I wasn't her biological child. The hospital made a mistake. The adoption wasn't legal, not fully. And no one ever told my parents. I stared at the papers, the truth reshaping everything I had believed for years. So you're not related to the Bennetts at all? I whispered. Jordan shook his head. Not by blood, not by law. Not by anything except history. Emily's hand found his. He held it like it was the only real thing in the room. I didn't call Daniel right away. I couldn't. How do you tell your ex-husband something like this? How do you begin that conversation? Hi, how's your morning? Oh, by the way, our kids accidentally got married. I sat alone in my car outside the church, hands still trembling, documents spread across the passenger seat like some terrible crime scene. I dialed his number with a shaken finger. He answered on the third ring, cheerful and light. Morning, Monica. Everything all right? My throat tightened. No, I whispered. Daniel, something's happened? His voice shifted instantly, worry replacing warmth. What is it? Is Emily okay? Yes. Well, she's safe. Physically safe. I took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. She's with Jordan. He paused. What do you mean she's with Jordan? They're together at St. Luke's Church. The line went quiet. Monica, tell me what's going on. I closed my eyes, tears gathering. They came here to get married. The silence that followed was long. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, what? I held the phone away from my ear. They didn't know, I said quickly. They didn't know anything. They didn't grow up together. They barely knew each other as kids. That doesn't matter, he cut in. They're step-siblings. Daniel! My voice cracked. They already got married last night at the courthouse. Another silence. This one heavier. Deadly. Then Daniel whispered. Voice trembling. Oh my God. Daniel, there's more. I explained the documents, the DNA mismatch, the hospital error, the adoption that wasn't valid, Jordan not being biologically related to his late wife, or to him, or to anyone in the Bennett family. Daniel didn't breathe for a moment. I'm not his father, not legally, not... His voice broke. Oh God. Daniel, I said softly, you are his father, the only one he's ever had. The line stayed quiet for a long time. I could hear him crying, quietly, brokenly. Finally, he exhaled. So, Emily and Jordan, they're not related, not by anything. No, I whispered. Not at all. There was another pause, not shocked this time. Calmer, resigned, almost relieved. And they love each other? He asked. Yes. A long breath came through the phone. Then, let them be happy. It was the last thing I expected him to say, but maybe he saw what I was starting to see. This wasn't a scandal. It was two lost people finding each other. In the most unexpected way. We planned the meeting for the following Sunday. I cleaned the house twice, even though it didn't need cleaning. That's what mothers do when they're anxious. They scrub. They rearrange. They make order where there is none. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart leapt into my throat. Emily and Jordan stood on the porch, hand in hand. Emily looked nervous, like she was preparing for a verdict. Jordan looked like he was ready to accept blame, even if he didn't deserve any. Behind them, Daniel walked slowly up the steps. He looked older, like the truth had added 10 years to his shoulders. "Come in," I said quietly. We sat in the living room, the same room that once held family Christmases, birthday parties, arguments, and whispered bedtime stories. Emily and Jordan sat together on the couch, fingers intertwined like two people clinging to the only solid thing of their world. Daniel sat across from them, knees bouncing anxiously. The folder of documents rested on the coffee table between us, a silent judge, a stack of truths ready to rewrite our family's past. Daniel stared at it for a long time before speaking. "Jordan?" Jordan looked up. Daniel's eyes softened, a father's eyes, even in confusion. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry for not knowing. I'm sorry the hospital made mistakes. I'm sorry you had to find out like this." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry I wasn't enough." Jordan's eyes filled instantly. "Dad, you were enough. You were everything. I never doubted that." Daniel blinked rapidly, trying not to cry. "You're my son," he said quietly. "Biology doesn't change that." Jordan nodded, lips trembling. Emily squeezed his hand. Then Daniel turned to look at both of them. Really look. "You're adults," he said slowly. "You met by chance. You fell in love by chance. You didn't do anything wrong." He exhaled, shoulders dropping. "We just didn't know the full truth." My eyes stung, because for the first time, instead of feeling broken, we felt like a family again. A strange family, a complicated family, but a real one. Daniel leaned back. "We're not losing them," he said quietly, looking at me. "Not this time." Emily let out a sob, relief, love, exhaustion, and Jordan wrapped an arm around her. For a moment, the room was silent, peaceful, whole. 2 months later, on a warm spring afternoon, Emily called me. "Mom," she said softly, "we want to do it again, the right way this time, with family." Those words alone brought tears to my eyes. They didn't want a secret. They didn't want shame. They wanted us, all of us, there to bless the first day of their new life. So we planned a small ceremony in the garden behind their apartment complex in Charlotte. The air was warm, the sky a perfect blue. Lavender ribbons danced from the wooden arch they'd built together. White folding chairs lined a narrow aisle scattered with pale pink petals. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't grand. But it was perfect. Emily stepped out in a soft ivory dress, lace around the sleeves, her hair curled just the way I used to do it when she was a little girl. The sun hit her face, and she glowed. Truly glowed. Jordan stood at the end of the aisle, hands trembling, eyes glassy. He looked like a man who couldn't believe his luck. Soft music played from a small speaker, and Daniel stepped forward. "I'll walk her halfway," he said gently, "and you walk her the rest." Emotion squeezed my chest. Emily linked her arm with Daniel's, taking slow, steady steps. When they reached the halfway point, she turned to him, eyes filling. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For loving Jordan, even when the truth was unclear." Daniel smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I love both of you," he said, "always." He placed her hand into mine. I walked her the rest of the way. My heart pounded, not from fear anymore, but pride. When we reached Jordan, I placed Emily's hand into his. He looked at me with eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you, Monica," he whispered. "For what?" I asked, echoing Emily's earlier words. "For being here, for not giving up on us." I touched his arm gently. "You've always been family," I said. even when the paperwork didn't say so. He nodded, eyes shining. Pastor Coleman, the same man who had once stopped them, now stood ready to marry them properly. This time, nothing stood in the way. The ceremony was simple, heartfelt. When Emily and Jordan said their vows, the wind blew softly through the lavender arch. Almost as if nature itself was blessing the moment. When they kissed, Daniel clapped first, loud, proud, joyful. I cried, everyone cried, and just like that, they were married the right way, the honest way, the way they deserved. 3 weeks after the wedding, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, worn edges, yellowed paper. I almost tossed it away, thinking it was junk. But something about it made me pause. Inside was a single sheet, old, lined, the ink faded in places. The handwriting was shaky. To whomever cares for the child known as Jordan, it began. My chest tightened. I read slowly, each word cutting deeper than the last. I am sorry. The hospital made a mistake I discovered too late. For years, I tried to correct the paperwork. No one listened. I was poor. I had no voice. I signed forms I didn't understand during childbirth. The boy is not mine, but I loved him. I wanted him to be raised by someone kind, someone gentle. Not by me, not in the life I lived. I hope he finds a family that sees him for who he is. Please forgive me. Please tell him he was wanted in the only way I knew how. It was signed in a trembling scrawl. Lucille Ann Harper. I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. This wasn't a mother abandoning her child. This wasn't a woman who didn't care. This was a woman lost in a system that broke people like her. A woman who tried, desperately, to fix a mistake that wasn't hers, and never succeeded. I placed the letter into a folder and drove to Charlotte that afternoon. Jordan opened the door with a warm smile. But when he saw the envelope, his expression changed. He read the letter standing in the kitchen. He didn't cry at first. He just breathed, slow, heavy breaths, like someone carrying a weight too big for their shoulders. Then he sank into a chair. Emily knelt beside him, holding his hands. After a long moment, Jordan whispered, "She tried. She actually tried." "Yes," I said softly. "She did." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I'm glad she wrote this," he said. "I'm glad I know. But I'm even more glad that I ended up here." He looked at Emily, then at me. Because sometimes family isn't biology. Sometimes it's love, choice, faith, accident, destiny, or all of them at once. Chapter 11. The New Beginning Expanded. Life became quieter after that. Emily and Jordan settled into married life in Charlotte. Emily finished her master's and began working as a counselor, something she was born to do. She had a gift for listening, for understanding pain buried deep. Jordan took over a small contracting business. He became known in his neighborhood as the helpful guy who could fix anything, except maybe his own past, though he was working on that too. They visited every holiday. Daniel joined us. We cooked. We laughed. We argued about who forgot to bring dessert. We rebuilt ourselves one meal at a time. People sometimes asked, "Isn't it strange? Your daughter marrying your stepson?" I always smiled. Things only look strange when you don't know the full story. Because the truth was simple. Jordan was never truly my stepson. Emily was never truly his stepsister. They were two souls wandering their own lonely roads until those roads unexpectedly crossed. A mistake at a hospital decades ago had caused pain, confusion, heartbreak, but it also created something beautiful. A love story that shouldn't have happened, yet did. A family that broke apart and found a way to heal. A truth that shattered us and then saved us. Sometimes the universe writes stories we don't understand. Sometimes families are chosen, not inherited. And sometimes love finds a path, even through the unlikeliest doors. The shock that once broke us eventually brought us together. And that became the truth that changed our entire family.